Welcome to the Spinning Our Gears podcast. Before we get started, a quick reminder. All views, opinions, and issues discussed on this podcast are solely those of the hosts and our guests. They do not reflect the views, opinions, or positions of any agency, department, city, municipality, county, state, country, or any other organization. For entertainment purposes, all characters and individuals discussed should be considered fictional unless otherwise stated. This show is rated E for explicit. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. Spinning Our Gears is a law enforcement leadership and mental health podcast where we confront the conversations others are afraid to have. Leadership failures, cultural issues, accountability, and the realities of life on and off the job. You can find us on all major podcast platforms, social media outlets, and online. And now, without further fanfare, here are your hosts, Turk, Swagger, Kenyon, and Erica. This is the Spinning Our Gears podcast.
Well, what is going on, Warriors? Welcome back after a very long-awaited absence to another episode of the Spinning Our Gears podcast. It has been almost 9 months since our last episode. Life has happened. Things have gone, I wouldn't say off the rails, but just crazy enough that we couldn't all get together and get something scheduled, and I take full blame for a lot of that because I'm the one who does the scheduling. So a lot of stuff going on at home that kept us from doing this, but we finally got sat down. Today you have me and Erica and I doing an episode. We figured we had to get one done before the end of the year, and we promise there's going to be a lot more coming your way very, very soon. But Erica, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. 2025 has, I wouldn't call it a banner year. What I've been saying for about a year now is Great Spirit or God has been aligning the shit out of my life, realigning the shit out of my life. So I've had several major things happen in the last year, and it's forced me to make some decisions that I didn't know if I was ready to make, but come to find out I was. And this is not the first time. I've kind of had my turn in the barrel where it seems like every major aspect of my life, car, marriage, career, finances, have had a major shakeup. And so I'm kind of glad that you asked that because it really ties in with what we're going to be talking about tonight, which is kind of the realigning that takes place after you leave this career field. And even for some of us that are smart, and I cannot include myself in that, those of us that are actually smart and prepare and plan ahead their departure from this career field. Please don't be like me and, you walk out the last day and you're like, who the fuck am I? What the hell am I supposed to do with myself? So we're getting better about that as a career field, but we'll probably still have some.
There's definitely not a lot of training being provided to current officers, getting them ready for life after law enforcement. So you just mentioned something. I know that we talked about the topic we're going to be talking about today, but you talked about being driven by spirit and by God. And I'd sent a text message out to the group a little while ago. I think we have to cover that part before we close this episode out too, the whole spirit and God part of it too. But the topic for today, the episode, is going to be about life after law enforcement. Like I said at the beginning of the show, a lot has been taking place over the last 9 months. Some crazy changes have taken place. A lot like Erica talked about, there's been a lot of realigning for each of us here on the show. And as it turns out, currently Erica and I are both out of law enforcement. Swagger is he's on assignment right now. He couldn't make it tonight. He's working his way out of law enforcement, and Kenion's the only one on the show who's still in the career field. So things are going to look a lot different for the show moving forward. We still have every single intention of gearing this show towards mental health and towards leadership and towards helping the brothers and sisters who are still in the career field and still going through the crap as we speak.
Absolutely.
So just to dive into it, I want to know, Eric, obviously you've told your story before. We know kind of how law enforcement ended for you. Tell us where you're at right now, though, because there's been some big changes for you this year in the career field, have there not?
There absolutely have. So, again, people that have been following this podcast, following Turk for a while, kind of familiar with my story. My career didn't end. It imploded, exploded, blew up, blew in, blew out. I burned it down. So I was not prepared, however, for the aftermath of that. If you fast forward, once I got into my own recovery with mental health, I was struggling with alcohol addiction for many years. I made the decision to go back to school. About 18 months into my own recovery. I'm not really sure if that was smart or not, but I did it. And got the bachelor's, got the master's. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to provide therapy for my first responder brothers and sisters, veterans, their family members. I wanted to be able to take all of the experiences that I had through those many years and be able to help people find their way out of what I call the abyss, right? When we don't even know which way to turn, which way is up, we don't know who we are, we've lost our identity. Now, if you fast forward, I got into recovery March the 10th of 2013. So if you kind of do the math on that, about 18 months later, I started going back to school, got my degrees. I am now the owner of a private practice. I'm outpatient. I do in-person and telehealth. My private practice is called Warrior Wellness and Recovery Initiative, Warriors Healing Warriors. You can find me on psychologytoday.com. You can find me just by putting in my name. I'm going to spell that out for everybody. It is Erika is my first name. My last name, I'm going to spell it phonetically if I don't screw it up because it's been a while. Is U as in Union, N as in Nora, B as in boy, ERHA, G as in George, E, N as in Nora, Unberhagen. Now, if you want to call me and you want to speak to me directly, you're welcome to give me a call at 210-985-3107. And if you want to email me, you can email me at erica.unberhagen at, all one word, counselingmail, mail.com.
And we have the link on spinningourgears.com. We will make sure that link is updated to her new private practice with her new email and everything like that. So we'll have that rocking and rolling. But Erica was telling me before we hit record that she actually has some very, very faithful clients. Maybe tell everyone a little bit about that.
Well, so I was in a group. So kind of the abbreviated version is after I finished school, I knew that I wanted to get as much experience as possible, as quickly as possible. The absolute best way to do that is to go to an inpatient treatment facility, which I did. It was Warriors Heart in Bandera, Texas. I was there for a little over 2 years. Once I left there, I was kind of stolen to go to Windmill Wellness Ranch, which is in Canyon Lake, Texas, and that was to set up a veteran and first responder program for them. And then once I figured I kind of had what I had been looking for and got what I needed, I decided to go into a group practice. I was with the group practice for about 2 years, learning about insurance and all of the shit that I can't stand about my job because I still hate paperwork. Look, I'm an old street cop. Some things don't change. And got it done. So, again, I do specialize in the treatment of veterans and first responders, but I'll do family members because I know that there are some pretty unique issues that come along with, being parented by us, being married to us, being parents of us. And so I was with that group practice for about 2 years, realized I had retained and gotten probably as much as I was going to get out of it, and then I turned my attention to doing what my ultimate goal was to begin with, which is to have my own private practice, and so that's what I do now. I've been up and running since October. So,
and
you were asking about the client. I do have one particular client. I can share this much. This individual lives a considerable length away from me. I won't give distance, but when I say considerable, I live in Texas, so just driving to the grocery store is 45 minutes. And that's
everything, yeah.
It's a considerable distance. I actually, because I moved from the group practice to my own private practice, so my location changed. And I felt horribly guilty. I was like, let's do telehealth. No, I want to see you in person. I said, well, okay, let's get you a provider that's a little bit closer to you. No, I don't want to work with anybody else. I want to work with you. So I was very blessed. All of my clients, when I left, verbalized that they wanted to stay with me. So that says something to me as the provider. But it also tells me something as a first responder, which is they feel that they're getting what they need from me, and they feel they're able to get it in a way that is digestible to them, which is so important to us. Like, Turk has heard me talk about this before. I don't use a lot of psychoanalytic, blah, blah, babbly-gook. If I give you an example in session, they might talk about maladaptive, cognitive beliefs or some shit like that. I like stinking thinking. Everybody knows what the hell stinking thinking is, right? It's stinking thinking. Sit there and use these $20 fucking words. I don't know. I mean,
that's what the degree was for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that we're stupid as a people, but we tend to live more in reality rather than in textbooks, and nobody wants to listen to a therapist talk like she's still sitting in a fucking classroom. And as you can clearly see, I don't do that. So
that's kind of what I wanted to get at, though, is that you have clients that were willing to move with you. Like you said, we're still street cops at heart, right? We still have that no matter no matter how far we get away from the profession, no matter how far we go, we will still be street cops at heart. And when you are in law enforcement, everyone knows that once you find something that you affiliate yourself with and that you trust and that you like, you will stick with that for a long time frame. So Erica has clients, it's proving how good she's been doing. Erica has clients that followed her, that are willing to travel great distances to have her services. She has some space available. I think it's gonna get closed up pretty quickly. So if you feel that she's someone you need to look out for, maybe make that phone call or that email sooner rather than later.
And I do cash pay, I do some insurances, I do out-of-network mental health provision, and I also have some sliding fee scales. So if you can't afford the full session fee, I will literally sit down and talk to you and go, okay, what can you afford that is still fair for me, commensurate to the services that I provide, but I also don't want my services to be an additional financial stress for somebody. So
sure.
With veterans and first responders, that is always going to be my heart and soul. And so if I have a brother or sister that calls me and says, look, I really need some help, but I can't afford what you're charging, we're going to sit down and figure it out together.
And, one of the things every Friday on the Thin Line Rock Station when I have my 2-hour segment, we do a buddy check. We do our buddy checks at the end of the first hour. And I talk about how if you're one of those first responders who needs help or who needs help getting your buddies help, that we have resources available to you at Spinning Our Gears. Erica is the number one resource that you can find. So I think she's definitely something that you should use whenever you need it.
Yeah. And I'll take phone calls, even if, somebody just needs an understanding ear on the other end of the phone call. But they're not really looking for therapy services per se. It's a veteran for first responder. Guarantee I'm going to make some time for them. I field calls all day long, all night long, and it's what I do. I mean, shit, I was on call 24/7 with the police department. I don't suppose this is much different. So,
right.
Yeah, this is important to me.
So speaking of that, you talked about how, before we hit record, some of the stresses that you're going through right now, obviously handling a private practice by yourself is I don't want to call it a burden, but definitely stress on you, definitely I can't think of the word I'm thinking of right now. But I want to know, compared to law enforcement, what is the stress like? I would assume I know what the answer is coming here, that there's a lot more rewarding part of it on this side of it. But just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is in some ways it's night and day, and in other areas it's actually very similar. A lot of the stress that I put on myself with the police department was to provide the absolute best services possible, be the absolute best police officer that I could be, so that I could best serve my community, work alongside my brothers and sisters. And so I've carried that into what I do now. Like I mentioned just a second ago, the on-call thing. I'm so used to. I did it for so many years, and I'm just like, if somebody needs to call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'll answer the phone just to give them somebody to talk to. But as far as the comparisons, I can, for the most part, I can put my work down at the end of the workday. Now, I have my own PTSD diagnosis, and vicarious trauma is a very legitimate thing in the world of therapy. I help people process trauma literally all day long, every single day.
You don't get to escape it.
I don't get to escape it. But the difference today is I've learned, because of my own years of therapy and my own mental health journey and my own in and out of inpatient treatment, outpatient, intensive outpatient, you name it, I've been there. But I was able to develop quite a few coping skills. And so, for the most part, I don't do it perfectly, but for the most part, at the end of my workday, this laptop gets shut, and I go live my life. I didn't know how to do that in law enforcement.
And that's what I wanted to get at.
I didn't know how to shut the laptop. I didn't know how to shut this off. And in the end, that cost me a career.
And I would assume, too, that there's the patient-client provider separation, right? In law enforcement, we go home, but then we have that phone attached to us at all times, and that contact is constantly taking place. And so all of the drama and the gossip and the bull crap is constantly happening, whereas now you get to shut that off a little bit, right?
Yeah. I absolutely do. When I was in law enforcement, I felt like it was required almost that I stay on top of the news, because you constantly have laws that are changing. You want to be aware of case law that's coming up. So I was watching the news a lot, and I thought that was a good thing. Because of the years that I've been in therapy and recovery and all of that, I realized that what I was really doing was I was coming home with gaping wounds from the job, and then I was sitting down at 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. or whenever the fuck I was sitting down to watch the news, and I was rubbing salt in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally yelling at the television. I've been off work for 3.5 hours, and I'm yelling at the TV because I'm pissed off at some politician talking, stupid about law enforcement, and I don't do that anymore either. I stay on top, and because I run Shadows of the Badge, I do stay on top of topics that I think are germane specifically to our career fields. But as far as like so-and-so murdered so-and-so in Nebraska, I don't.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear stories anymore about children that are being harmed. Honestly, that's still one of my Achilles heels. And I still, if I'm watching the news and I see somebody pop up, some asshole got arrested for, being a dirtbag pedophile.
Right. Piece of crap. Yep.
Then, so I've cut that out as well.
Well, and it's not just rubbing salt in your wounds. It's the media gets to portray how they want to portray it.
Oh,
so it's almost like you're rubbing, cinnamon or cayenne pepper into your wounds at that point, right?
Yeah, because you just finished working a, 8, 10, 12-hour shift, whatever your deal is. You're out there putting your ass on the line, and then you come home and you're going to watch stories about, all cops are bad and F the police, and don't do that. Because you're going to start focusing on that to the detriment. And then you start to forget that there are really good people in your community that you serve and that really do count on you. And that do care for you and want you to be healthy and well. And they're proud of you and the service that you provide and grateful. So that makes a huge difference. We have to focus on the positives. There's always going to be negatives with this profession.
And I was just going to say,
there are negatives with being a therapist. So
once you get to the point in your career as a peace officer where every single call you go on, you're suspecting the story that's being given to you, it's time to seek help because you are burnout, you're jaded, and you got a lot of other things going on. You probably have some form of PTSD at that point when you're going to go talk to Grandma Smith and you're wondering what part of the story she's lying to you about.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting because I had to actually sit through classes, right, when I was working on these pieces of paper back here, my degrees. But I'm sitting in these classes listening to people talk about stuff like this, and I get it.
Did you feel like it was you at all, or just you didn't understand it?
I don't think I understood it at the time.
Okay. Possibly an unfair question. Do you feel more rewarded now, or more when you were on the job?
Oh man, that's a hard question.
Yeah, I know. I told you, not fair.
No, it's okay. I don't know that one is better than the other. I was able to do some pretty incredible things in my time in law enforcement. I was able to help get justice for a lot of kids, for a lot of people. And so that was extremely rewarding. The things that I loved about that career, watching the light come on in people's eyes, watching people realize their mistake and going, you know what, I want to do something different, or I want to do something better, or I want to get away from this guy or this woman that's been, beating the snot out of me for years. Those were the things that I truly enjoyed about that career. I mean, look, when you're in your 20s chasing bad guys and climbing fences and motherfucking people to the ground, that's all fun, right? Foot pursuits and high-speed pursuits. But when the badge and gun were no longer optional for me, I had to sit down and figure out what was it about that career that I loved. And it wasn't the badge and the gun. It was what I was able to do with those things. And so when I first started looking into, okay, what am I going to do with all of this experience, and how can I help other first responders get through what I've been through, and in some ways still go through occasionally? How do I do that, right? And so I love what I do today. I still get to see those light bulb moments. In fact, I probably get to see them more than when I was in law enforcement. I have clients that I have not worked with in years now. But they still have a method to contact me, and I get pictures of recovery coins. I get pictures of feathers, because I in inpatient especially, I'm notorious for giving out feathers to people, so I get these pictures constantly, and that, I mean, that to me is the same type of saving a life feeling that you get pulling a 5-year-old out of a burning vehicle right before it, becomes fully engulfed.
Yeah.
It's the same feeling of, I've contributed something positive and I've helped my fellow man maybe live a little bit better or a little bit longer today.
And I guess the reason I was curious about that is I feel like you certainly get to have those connections more often, like you just talked about. It was a little bit unfair because you didn't really experience law enforcement after COVID. And there was a sharp turn after COVID hit, especially if you were working overnights and if you were at an agency of under 100 people or less, where the type of work just completely changed and the amount of work completely changed. And I've noticed since being where I'm at now, part of it's the type A personality in me, but it's busy nonstop from 6 a.m. until 4 o'clock at night when I'm off. And I'm able to check off a bunch of stuff and feel proactive and feel like I've got something worthwhile done at the end of the day. So that's kind of why I wanted to know, where you were at in those regards.
I mean, I'm in a good place with it. I got positives from both career fields, but the interesting thing is the highlights, the positives, they're the same for both. Because I really did, after I left law enforcement and once I was able to finally get the help that I needed, I was able to sit down with the guidance of someone else, and I don't know if I've ever told you this story, Turk. This was a therapist who, this was many, many, many years ago, but she has, oddly enough, become a friend of mine today. We are still in contact. So she likes to remind me every now and then just how much of a sick puppy I was back in the day. And I don't know where I was going with that, Chuck. You're going to have to remind me. Sometimes I get off.
You said you had a story you hadn't told me yet in regards to this therapist.
Yeah, so there's a couple of them, actually. The one that I can really think of, honestly, like I said, I was a very sick peppy back in the day, and my core beliefs were horrible. It's what a lot of us end up with, right? The things that I was telling myself constantly. I'm a failure. I'm worthless. I'm a screw up. I'm a bad mom. I'm a bad wife. I'm, the litany of things. And so I walk into this woman's, it's literally only the first or second time I've ever talked to her. I'm in an inpatient treatment facility, so not only am I not happy about that, but I am still somewhat detoxing off of booze, and I am feeling frosty, right? And so I go into her session, and she says, by the way, I spent about 45 minutes of that session telling her what a loser I was. Literally just walked in. She goes, "Oh, hi, Miss. How are you doing today?" And I went, I'm a failure and I'm a terrible person and I just want to die, right? And to her credit, she let me go. About 45 minutes into the session, I start winding down, and she goes, "Well, I'll tell you what, Erica." She said, "We'll finish this session when you give me at least one positive thing about yourself." And I said, "Lady, have you not been fucking listening to me? I just spent 45 minutes telling you I'm a piece of shit. I've completely ruined my life, and I don't even know if I want to live anymore." And she goes, "Oh, we'll finish your session when you come up with one." And I said, "Fine, I'm not fucking drunk right now." And she goes, "That's really good, Erica."
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
"I'll see you next week." And I'm like...
You didn't give me what I wanted, but okay.
I call that mind fucking.
Yeah.
Like I literally will tell clients that story, and then I'm like, I promise you I won't ever do that to you. Like, if I'm crawling around in your brain, you know it. It's up front. She kind of slipped in the back door, but it worked.
Snuck her way in. So you've been out for a little over a decade now, and I know that you said you kind of tune out a lot of the bull crap with the media, but I'm curious, a decade out, when you see, I don't want allegations or stories about a peace officer, are you still immediately asking yourself, what's the real story? Or are you starting to look at things a little more constructively now?
I think it's a combination. There is a part of me that's like, what is the real story? But then I've also gotten, and probably because, I should have been better at it as a supervisor when I was a sergeant with the PD, but I actually think I've gotten better with doing that now, is just being able to sit back and objectively look at something. And yeah, I could have done that better as a sergeant. But
I think all of our stories, obviously there was trauma within law enforcement, but then there also the way that we exited, there was some trauma there as well. And so I'm just curious to know, and anyone listening who wants to chime in and hit us up at spinningourgears.com, I'd love to hear from you. If you've gone through some of the similar things that we have and the exit was traumatic, has your brain functioning and the way that you look at things changed? Do you look at things differently? Do you hold that trauma when you're judging people?
I do look, well, this is how it affects me differently. I used to think that the trauma was something that was done to me. I now look at it as trauma was something that was done for me. There's this huge thing called post-traumatic growth, right? Some of us have heard about it, some of us have not. We hear about PTSD and we're like, oh my God, that's horrific. You've got this thing and it changes the structure in your brain. But what we don't very often talk about is the growth that can take place after that PTSD diagnosis, if you're legitimately working on the things that kind of got you to that point. PTSD is not a punishment. It's just a symptom that you did your job, you did it well, and you saw some shit. So for me, trauma, my basic explanation is that which from the outside looking in doesn't make any damn sense. Kids aren't supposed to die. Mothers of 5 children aren't supposed to die. Families aren't supposed to die in car fires, So part of my job now as a therapist is to help them find a way to make sense out of that. Sometimes it's changing just how we view the situation. Sometimes it's incorporating spirituality, higher power, a belief in something larger than yourself. But there's lots of ways to approach it.
I love that, though. I've never heard it put that way. PTSD is not a punishment. It's just a sign that you did your job right. I think that's great. I think more people need to understand that and hear that. Perfect segue. You talked about it. I think we need to get into it. Just this is a little bit handcuffed because my story isn't ready to be released. That's kind of a common theme with this podcast for some reason. We're constantly holding off on our stories, but the wounds are still a little bit fresh. Still some things going on in the background. So I can't tell the entire story. But what I will say is that about a year ago, I was switching agencies, and I was in kind of I don't even want to call it a dark place, but it was just a depressing place, really. And from that place, I really started to evaluate where I was spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And I'm a person who's always believed in God. I've always considered myself a Christian. I pray every day, but I didn't understand what the relationship with God was, right? And that was something that I started to learn and figure out as I was going through these stages and covering up these wounds. And so for me, it was really important. I reached out to Erica and Swagger and Kenyon, and I said, hey, I would like to include some more spirituality and some more religion within the podcast. I want to make sure it's okay with you guys. And it was a resounding yes from all three of you, which I think is awesome. I guess I would love to know where that plays in for you, both with your recovery and with your practice right now, and just where you're at. So
it's great because we're going to be able to kind of loop back to the very beginning of the podcast where we were kind of talking about this idea of enlightenment. I mentioned earlier for the longest time I thought that the end of my career was something that had been done to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now I realize it was something that was done for me. Here's the truth. Once I was separated from that career long enough to be able to look at it objectively, I realized that I held on a hell of a lot longer than I should have. I was so determined to make that career work. I got to pay my bills. I got to put a roof over my kid's head. I got to be successful at this. I got to be the best cop possible. That I was absolutely determined to stay at that department despite all of the issues that I knew were inherent with it, to my own detriment. Okay, so for me, I spent years drinking, of course, and being pissed at God. How could you? I worked so hard to get away from my family's legacy, and I went into law enforcement instead of what my family did, and I get away from the addiction, and here I am drinking myself to death, and I'm losing my career, and I don't know how to stop any of this. And I realized that was a period of shaking up for me. There were some things that definitely needed to change. I was on my way out the door. I had had a gun in my mouth more than once. I had tried to take myself out on multiple occasions. It was time to get the hell out. I was still determined to try to make it work. My God.
Yep.
My God stepped in and said, little girl, you're done. But I also believe that I was meant to be in that career for the time that I was because I needed those experiences in order to move into the next phase of what I call my life, but also is God or Great Spirit's plan for me. I had to have those experiences if I wanted to sit down with somebody in a session room and talk to them the way that I'm able to talk to them. I literally, when I started this, thought to myself, I want to become the therapist that I needed for so many years. I had a therapist couch me on my language one time. I'm in an inpatient treatment facility. I'm trying to save my life. And apparently the F word was fucking offensive to her. And so I finished telling her what I'm telling her, some trauma story, and she looks at me and she goes, ma'am, I really need you to curb your language. And I said, lady, if that's your biggest fucking concern right now, we have nothing left to talk about. I'm not here trying to fix my language.
Trying to fix yourself, yeah.
I'm here trying to save my life at this point. I literally was on death's door when all of that was going on. And so that was all done for me because I was able to take all of those experiences, all of the bad therapists that I had over the years, the ones that sucked, the ones that were great, and I was able to synthesize all of that into what I do today. And by the way, while I'm thinking about it, I'm sure that there are other therapists out there that do this, but I am one of the only therapists that I know in my area. I have a full-size professional massage chair that I use in session because I've had therapists sit with their clipboard before and their pen and go, tell me your trauma, and I tell them the story, and then they go, yeah, time's up, we'll see you next week, and you're like, what the fuck did I just do? I already knew that story. I didn't have to tell it 20 more times to a random stranger. So when I'm working with clients in trauma, if it's a good fit for them, I have several other tools that I use as well. I put them in the full-size professional massage chair. They're getting a full shiatsu, heated, full-body massage while they're processing. I've literally had guys talk about some of the most horrific calls of their career, some of the most horrific things to happen on deployment. I get them into the chair after they've told the story. The second there's a way that I do it, and they tell the story again, and I walk back in 15 minutes later, and they're sleeping.
Yeah, I bet.
And then they go, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I fell asleep." And I'm like, "Not apologize for that. My God, it's a huge compliment for you to be able to talk about what you just talked about and then go to sleep."
Yeah. It's your body and your mind resetting.
Absolutely. That realigning that we're talking about. Sometimes it happens in therapy rooms too.
You know, for me, I like I said, I always had religion in my life, but I always thought I had this plan, right? This was how things were going to work out. I was in law enforcement because I loved it, and I was going to work my butt off like you did. I was going to make the sacrifices, and I was going to sacrifice some things now with my family, but it was all going to pay off in the end, right? I was going to make sergeant, make lieutenant, make the money, get to day shift, that everything was going to be...
Chief of police.
Yeah. Everything was going to be great at some point. And I was so stuck on that idea of my plan that I think things had to be shaken for me to realize that there is no plan for us, right? That there's no particular reason that a person dies or gets cancer or gets robbed. Right. It's not our plan. It is someone else's plan. Yeah. And I think I needed that shake up to understand that and
Absolutely.
really dive into the spirituality part of it. And I have a testimony that will come at some point, I think sooner rather than later, but I fully believe that God spoke to me through Scripture, and it was an enlightening event.
Yeah. So I had, I used to get really jealous. For those of you that are familiar with 12-step programming, if you go in long enough, you're probably going to hear somebody talk about kind of their burning bush moment where they had that cognitive change. They're like, "Oh my God, God really does exist. He really does love me, and He's going to help me out with all of this. And I'm on my knees, and I feel His presence." I never had that. In fact, I've actually shared in those meetings before, like I think if I'd have had a burning bush or the angels would have started singing through my living room window, I probably just would have had a heart attack and died right there on the spot. So, God was kind of smart. He kind of slipped it in, because when I first left law enforcement, I was actually raised, for part of my childhood, I was raised Catholic. I'm not a practicing Catholic today. I don't hold anything against anybody that practices Catholicism. It just wasn't the way that it was presented to me. It didn't work well. Religious trauma is also a part of my trauma history. And so I can remember the entire time I was in law enforcement. It's interesting because, sometimes you talk about stuff like this because, we're kind of in a job where death it's right there.
Yeah.
And I used to say it all the time. I go, you know what? If God really does exist, right? If God really does exist, and I don't praise His name, and I don't go to church every Sunday, and I get up to the pearly gates, and with everything good that I've done in this life, and He tells me that I can't come in because I didn't believe or whatever, well, and I didn't want to be in it anyway. I used to say that all the time. Well, survey said that's not true. So one of the first really connections, because we crave that when we leave this career field, we lose all of our connections. And so I felt so alone and so isolated. And so in recovery through treatment programs, I was kind of reintroduced to God. And I had a phenomenal sponsor. This was many years ago. I was telling him, I'm really having trouble with the steps because I am pissed at God. I didn't believe in Him, and I was pissed at Him, all in the same breath. Boy, that takes a special kind of sick, twisted, and conflicted. But there I was, and I sat in that spot for many, many years. So he said, "What is your problem with God?" And I said, "My problem is He's let some really shitty things happen. My childhood, the crap that I saw in law enforcement, me becoming an alcoholic after working so hard to get away from that part of my little family legacy. As all of these things, I'm pissed." And he said, "Well, describe the God that you were raised with." And so I did. I was raised with a hellfire and brimstone. You fuck up, you're going to hell. And he said, you did see that part in the step where it says God of your understanding. And I said, I don't know what the hell that means. And he goes, it literally means what it says. God is what you need him or her to be, if that's the case. So think about it this way. If you've got two people that go to the same church, they listen to the same pastor preach out of the same book, they sit next to each other in the same pew week after week after week. If you put those two guys aside, or ladies or whatever, and you ask them to describe God, you're still going to get different descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
We all have our own assignations. So this is what my sponsor, my AA sponsor, told me to do. He said, I want you to go home, and he said, I want you to write out everything that you wish God was. And I'm thinking, okay, I guess I'm going to go home and write all of the things down that God isn't and hasn't been. Loving, kind, benevolent, supportive, empathetic, consistent, true, honest, all of those things, and so I wrote them all down. And I walk in and I go, here, and he goes, read them out loud. And I read them out loud, and somewhere halfway about down the list, I started crying. And he goes, what's going on? I said, this is what I want. This is what I've always wanted. And he goes, then get it. Get it. And I went, is that easy? And he went, yeah. You just got to say you believe. I mean, at some point, at 5 or 6 years old, you knew that you weren't going to become you didn't know that you were going to be a police officer, but at some point, you came to believe. There was no proof that you were going to become a cop, but you came to a point where you believed that you could do that, and then you did it. Well, come to a point where you just say, I'm going to believe, and then do it. And then see what happens. I didn't give my trust 1,000% in the beginning. I gave it in modicum. It was kind of like I was testing God. Not going to lie. I knew what I was doing. I needed to see if I gave him my trust back like I had given him as a child, that I wasn't going to get hurt.
Right.
I wasn't going to get disappointed again. I wasn't going to feel betrayed. And what I came to realize again through all of that is all of these things that I had been through in my life, God was not punishing me. He was training me. He was enlightening me. Chargo, it's been a while, but you may have heard me say this before. Everybody always talks about the phoenix that rises from the ashes. And that's a beautiful fucking image. It's a wonderful way to describe recovery, surviving these career fields, or a phoenix that rises from the ashes. But what's got to happen first?
It's got to burn.
The phoenix has got to burn. So we go through these trials, these tribulations, these horrific, tragic times in our life, and we either let them define us and defeat us, or we let them define us and enlighten us. Can we take the lessons? And if you can get the lessons out of the most difficult things that you've dealt with, and I've dealt with everything you can think of, everything from family suicide, childhood sexual abuse, this is my own story. I've still find ways to assign some positive meaning. And when I'm able to do that, I'm able to say, God didn't do those things to me. He did them for me. Even the childhood sexual abuse, I've had clients go, you cannot tell me that he did that for you. And I go, the hell I can't. You have no idea how many kids I helped as a police officer, because I was able to get them to talk to me when they wouldn't talk to anybody else.
It was done for you and for them.
Yes. They knew. Kids know. They know when you understand them. They feel it.
Okay, a million things going through my head right now. I love it all because book 2, which is being written right now, the cover was going to be a phoenix coming out of the ashes. So I love that, just that random connection, right? But I think Erica's testimony here and her story that she's going through relates to a lot of people, because if you are not involved in religion, or if you're on the outside trying to get in, and you see all of the people in a church online talking about how much they love God, how great their relationship is with it, you think, why don't I have that? Well, it's called a relationship. You don't go from 0 to 1,000,000 right off the bat.
I love that you talk about that, because I literally, when I'm working with clients, I'm like, if you want to build a relationship, look,
you got to start.
you got to start somewhere. And so developing a relationship with yourself, with another human being, and with God are all the same thing. You have to get to know the entity, right? That was me writing the list of all the attributes that I wanted in my higher power. And then I had to start talking to it. And in the beginning, it felt real damn weird. Now I do it all the time. I do formal prayer at night, but I also pray all day long. Something happens good, I'm like, I got you. I know that was you, right? And if something goes shitty, I'm like, okay, what the fuck am I supposed to be learning right now?
What are you trying to tell me right now?
Another lesson. I can't deal with another one. But he never gives me more than I can handle. I know that's a horrible thing to say, but at 55 years old, I'm still here, and I have been through hell and back. He knows what we're capable of.
Another roadblock that I experienced it myself, was the idea that there isn't a concrete thing in front of you. Like, I love my wife. She's right there. I love my dog. It's right there.
I got you.
Yeah.
I deal with that one all the time because we tend to be fact-driven people. Evidence. We are evidence-based. Everything is evidence, right? Hardcore. Show me the facts. I remember begging. This is during the period when I was angry, didn't believe. Like, I used to throw me a bone. Everybody else gets burning bush moments. Why the fuck can't I have one? I want proof. Show me something. What I realized in recovery ties back to a conversation that I had with my youngest son several years ago. He was probably 19 or 20 years old. We're in the car. He's driving. I'm scared shitless anyway, so I'm probably saying some prayers. And my son likes to ask me questions about my belief system because he kind of fluctuates. He's very scientific, and I'm agnostic, I'm atheist. He kind of goes back and forth. And he said, Mom, I don't understand. Help me understand how come I know that the Bible says that, like, God parted the Red Sea and he turned water to wine and he did all of these other things. He said there were all these miracles back in the day. He goes, so why can't he do them now? And I went, he does. And he went, where, when, how? Show me, Mom. And I went, you're talking to one. I should not be here, Kirk. People that are listening to this podcast. I was drinking 2/5 of 80 proof whiskey every 24 to 48 hours, and I did it for almost 15 years. I shouldn't be alive. I shouldn't be able to complete full sentences, which my clients sometimes question. I should have Korsakoff syndrome. At the very least, I should have what the old folks used to call wet brain. It's an actual condition where you get brain damage from drinking too much. The fact that I still have I told my son, I said, so when you're talking about that proof, Turk, here's my proof. It's how I feel.
Yep.
When I'm talking to Great Spirit and I feel that connection, that's my proof. When I'm struggling with something and I can reach out and talk to him for a little bit and feel his presence and feel better, that's my proof. I shouldn't be here. That's my proof. I have that gun in my mouth more than once. An entire bottle of trazodone did not kill me. This was a long time ago, but there was my proof. All those years that I was begging to prove that he existed, and the proof was all around me, but until I could concede the possibility of his existence, I wasn't going to see the proof. If I don't believe in God, and a white figure, white robed figure just shows up in my living room, I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to lose my shit. I'm not going to understand what that is.
And you're going to find every reason to doubt what that is.
Oh, absolutely. Right? My God, what the hell did my husband slip me a Mickey? Or maybe I should lay off the booze, or,
So I guess here's what I will say.
But you can't fake what you feel in here. And I feel in here that connection with Great Spirit. I feel something that I've never felt with anyone or anything else. And that includes my family, my kids, my career, my former colleagues. There's a connection there that I cannot fully explain. I'm not supposed to. But right. I love it. And that's my proof.
Yes, ma'am. What I will say is that my philosophy and my theory has always been that I am not going to ever shove religion down someone's throat, because if they're not ready, it's just going to do more damage than good, right?
Absolutely.
We're going to continue to include religion and scripture and God in this podcast from here on out. But if you are looking for that mini miracle, or you are looking for that connection, find a quiet place, maybe put on a little bit of instrumental music in the background, get a Bible, and just randomly open it and take time to actually read what you see. I have never, not one time have I done this where I have not picked something up from that random freaking page that I flipped to that I didn't need to hear that day.
And the big thing about Alcoholics Anonymous, by the way, I got to put a little bit of a plug in here. I know it's a program of attraction rather than promotion, but the big book, which is the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, works the exact same way. It has never failed. When I've needed something, I've needed a little guidance, I literally, well, you saw me do this a minute ago. I was kind of smiling because I'll crack those books and I'll put my finger and I look down and that's what I'm reading. And it never fails. I'm always like, that's exactly what I needed to read. And I'm pragmatic. I'm still a very grounded in reality kind of person. But again, the proof is
in the pudding.
You just have to be willing to see it. You have to concede that it's feasible in order to accept the possibility.
I love it. I do. I think the conversation has gone great ways. We've put in 48 minutes now. I think we've covered quite a bit. It's just kind of an intro into where we're at right now. And I think we're going to leave it at that. Like I said, we are going to continue to support law enforcement through this podcast. Just because some of us are out doesn't mean that we're going to stop doing that. We are always going to be a resource. We're always going to be someone that you can reach out to or that you can just throw on and listen to. The focus will always be mental health and leadership. If we go random ways, we go random ways. I think we all have ADHD. We've talked about that before. There is that possibility, but at the core, this show is not going to change at all. I love the fact that we talked about getting out. It's one of the greatest decisions that I've made was getting out. Physically, mentally, spiritually, family, all of it. If you think that you are at that turning point, really, really start to self-evaluate because it could be the thing that you need. It may be something where you need to go talk to someone like Erica. You may need to go find a therapist and say, this is the crossroads where I'm at. And you might just be surprised at which way you or which way God takes you.
Right. Absolutely. That was the first step for me. It was just finally conceiving. I needed some help getting this shit figured out. I couldn't do it on my own. I tried.
One more time, Erica, where can listeners find you at?
So you can go on to psychologytoday.com and you can put my information in there. I'll spell my full name out. It's Erika. Middle name is Rose, Rose. R as in Robert, O as in Ocean, S as in Sam, E as in Edward. Last name Unberhagen, U, N as in Nora, B as in boy, E-R-H-A, G as in George, E, N as in Nora. If you want to reach me by email, I can be reached at erica.unberhagen@counselingmail, mail.com. If you want to reach out to me by telephone, you can call me at 210-985. I knew this was going to happen. You and I talked about this
we talked about it.
I need my readers. Hold on a second. I'll give that to you. Sorry. All right. You can call me at 210-985-3107. And I'm located in Pipe Creek, Texas. So.
And we've got the information at spinningourgears.com. That contact us link sends me an email directly. If you need something from Erica, if you just want to talk to us, send us an email. We'd love hearing it. But if you need something from Erica, I will keep everything 100,000,000% anonymous, and I will get you to her directly. Before we sign off, obviously, we haven't mentioned it yet. We have to thank all of our sponsors, RisenWarriorCoffee.com, the Thin Line Rock Station, and then we do have the affiliation with Millicor. I guess I wouldn't call them a sponsor. They just, if you order through our link, it helps us out a little bit. So we'd like to thank all the sponsors for helping us out, getting us where we're at right now. Erica, do you have anything else before we sign off?
I do not. You know what? One thing that I would like to ask for anybody that's listening to the podcast this evening, do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. Do one little act of self-care before you go to bed tonight or before you go on shift. Dude, self-care doesn't have to be anything major. If you want to go play a friggin' round of golf, go do that. But self-care can also be, I'm going to spend an extra 5 minutes in a hot shower. I'm going to smoke a fine cigar before I go to bed tonight. I'm going to have a little snifter of brandy if you're not one of me. But do something kind for yourself. We literally give and give and give in these career fields, and we feel guilty about taking for ourselves. You can't pour from an empty cup. do something kind for yourself before you go to bed tonight. That's what I want to end with.
Hell yeah. Hell yes. What I will end with is, at some point in between this episode and next week on the Thin Line Rock Station, do something good for your fellow man or woman out of uniform. It doesn't have to be big. High five, handshake, give them a compliment on their outfit for the day. Just something good. That way we can change this world one person at a time. All right. Stay safe, warriors. We will get through this together.
Have a good evening.